We're closing on the end of the liturgical year as we move towards Christ the King, and then we'll be starting the new liturgical year with Advent. And with all this, we move towards the end of the gospel parables. And this always, every year, it's always about, are you ready for the end of time? Are you ready to meet Jesus? We're not singing it today, I don't think, but that song, soon and very soon we are going to see the King. No, we're not. We only had rain down. But we look and we say, all these things we hear in second reading about, what about those who have fallen asleep? And St. Paul says, we shall all be with the Lord. Though you don't have to worry if you died earlier or later. There's the opportunity for all of us to be with the Lord. Therefore, console one another with these words. But there's this opportunity where the Lord is saying, think about these things. Remember your death. Not as a kind of horrid thing like, oh no, I'm going to die. But rather saying, am I ready to see the Lord? Am I ready to go before Him? What in my life needs to change? What in my life is open fully to God's loving message and His love? We know by our faith that there are two different judgments. There's the particular judgment when we die before Almighty God and then we're brought into heaven or purgatory or hell. But then there's also the final judgment. And with the final judgment, what's this? This will be at the end of time when all things are done. And we will see every eventuality of every action that we have done. All the good actions and how they went out and touched so many, and how they touched so many, and how they touched so many. And all the bad, and how that touched so many, and that touched so many. And we'll see all the effects of everything. And we won't be able to brag for all of our good because we'll look and see, yeah, but that was because of all these other people that did this for me. And we won't be able to be too discouraged as long as we have repented and gone before the Lord, because He'll say, do you see how I was able to transform even the evil into good if you allowed me to? So the Lord is inviting us really to think about, are we ready? Are we ready to see Him? Are we prepared? So we have this parable. Now, I don't know about you. This is kind of a confusing parable. It's a confusing parable to me. I read multiple commentaries on this, and still everybody has some take on it, but none of them are saying this is the definitive meaning of it. So it's always like, is this really it? I'm not sure. But it's this confusing parable about these 10 virgins who are going out to meet the bridegroom. Now, just as an aside, we got to remember this is a story. It's not about... We don't take it as literal, this is exactly what happened, but Jesus is trying to make a point by sharing this story. So if you say, but what about those 5 virgins that didn't share their oil? Shouldn't they have shared? That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is not about whether you should share or not. Jesus isn't trying to make that point. He's getting at something else. So, because in other places, Jesus does say we're supposed to share. So try to take this in context. But we do know, okay, here's these 12 virgins. They brought their lamps and they went out to meet the bridegroom. But the bridegroom was delayed. What's the story here? Well, in that time period, the way weddings were done, the bridegroom, as they're getting ready for the bride to come and live with him after their marriage, they would have a party going on at his house for a few days. Then he would go to the father of the bride, along with his parents. So the father of the groom, father of the bride would be working out the final details. Now they've worked out the gross details earlier. Now they're working out the fine details about, okay, for the dowry, this is how much, and this is all the details. And sometimes, well, that could take a little bit longer than expected. And so that did. It was going on and on and on, and these virgins who would be like bridesmaids, they'd be waiting, and they're supposed to escort the bride and the groom over to the big party at the groom's house. They're waiting and they're waiting, and maybe they were at the party earlier and had something to drink. I don't know, but they're waiting and they fall asleep. What happens? Finally, it's late, and there's this, "Oh, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him." "Oh, we got a job to do." Okay, and so they get up, and there's this whole thing with the oil. But so it's this understanding. They're waiting for the bridegroom. And what's the whole point of this? I think what the point of this is Jesus is saying, following him is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Are we ready for the marathon? Are we ready for the long term? In another parable, Jesus talks about this. He says, about the seed that's strewn. Some are on the path, some are in shallow soil, and it springs up immediately, but it has no roots. Has great joy at finding the Lord and His Word. This is incredible, but it doesn't last very long. Rather, we need to look and say, are we ready for the long haul? Now, looking around, there are probably a lot of you. You've been Catholic your whole life. And you know this is not just a once and done thing. But this is the love story of Almighty God. He's saying, I am calling you to look at this as a long-term courtship, getting closer and closer to each other. I was just thinking about this as I was waiting in the confessional and praying, that, how often we look at like married love, that it starts out with this bang, and then over time, as the days and weeks go by and life gets crazy and the kids and the work and having to fix something in the house and all these things, that the initial zest might not be there. You still love each other, even if you get on each other's nerves. You still love each other. But it's like, okay, we're not just in this for the first honeymoon phase. We got to stick with it through the struggles, through the ups and the downs. How does that go? The richer for poorer, for better, for worse, for sickness and health. And the Lord is saying, this is the story of our lives. Are you in it for the long haul of seeking me? And this is the normal thing of our lives. We don't just have the ups. We also have the downs. I'm going to be doing a series, not starting this week, but the week after, where we'll be doing this, going through Ignatius of Loyola's 14 rules for discernment of spirits. And that's what he's getting at, is the whole, our spiritual lives are ups and downs. They're consolations and they're desolations. They're the peaks and they're the valleys. And a lot of times when we get into the valleys, we think, well, what's wrong with me? What have I done wrong? Is there something wrong with my spiritual life? How come I'm going into this valley? What's wrong with me? I don't have the fervor I once had. Well, the Lord is saying that's the normal way of the spiritual life on this earth, not till we get up there, when we'll be in the constant consolation. But we have the ups and the downs. And do we recognize when we're in those down spots, are we ready to endure through in seeking the Lord with all our heart? When we don't have that initial fervor of seeking Him out, that maybe that initial retreat experience has brought us when we first fell in love with the Lord. He's saying, endure through. Be ready for the long haul. Bring that extra oil for when it's just not going to be the way you thought it was. The Lord is inviting us to look and say, are we going to be in this for the long haul, for the marathon, not the sprint? And ultimately, when we get to heaven, we'll be looking back and saying, it really wasn't that long after all. So what if we lived 90 or 100 or 125 years on this earth and it was a struggle? 120,000 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, that was it? I thought that was long. We were made for eternity. And that's something we can always cling to. Every person who is conceived comes into existence at a particular point in time, but never goes out of existence. We never go out of existence. And so the Lord is saying, will you seek me so you can be in my arms for all eternity? in this marathon of this life, it may seem forever. But 26.2 miles will get past us eventually. The question is, will we endure in seeking out after the Lord? Or will we throw in our hands when things aren't easy and give up? May we ask the Lord that He provide that oil for us so that we can continue to seek Him, the lover of our souls.